So, Mr Nowak, tell me about the march later on.
OK, well, this will be March, part of our wider series of activities that are being held today to support our campaign to protect the right to strike, but also to stand up for our public services and support those hundreds of thousands of public sector workers who are taking strike action today around pay and that have been taking strike action over the last few weeks and months. So this is part of our whole series of activity up and down the country, and we hope that the government will take it seriously and listen to the voices of working people.
Why do you think they will?
Well, I would hope that any employer would have the good grace and the sense to listen to the staff when the staff tell them that there's a problem. And there clearly is a problem. It doesn't matter whether it's teachers, civil servants, physiotherapists, paramedics. Lots of workers saying we can't afford another year of a real terms pay cut. And as I say, Kay, I would expect any employer to say, well, listen, let's listen to your concerns, let's respond to those concerns, and let's try and deliver a fair pay rise. And up until now, unfortunately, the government hasn't done that, but I'm an optimist and I'm a negotiator, and I hope that the government will listen and will come to the table.
Education Secretary sat there a moment ago, she said, do what you want, there's no more money.
Well, you know, government is all about political choices, and I'm afraid this government has made the wrong choices. Now, Gillian Keegan is right to a certain extent. It's Rishi, Sunak and Jeremy Hunt that need to make the money available to fund a decent pay rise. And so far, the Prime Minister and his Chancellor have been missing in action. I think last time I was on your programme, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I said that we wanted to sit down with the Chancellor and the PM to talk about what could be done in terms of fair pay settlement, new money on the table.
We haven't
had a response. Well, I'm not interested in beer and sandwiches or indeed tea and sympathy. What I'm interested in doing is resolving these disputes, but resolving them in a way that puts money in the pockets of all those public sector workers who say they can't afford another real terms pay cut. And you know, we've talked in the past about the staffing crisis in our NHS, 300,000 vacancies in care homes and in the NHS. We've got a staffing crisis in our classrooms as well. I mean, a third of teachers, around 250,000 of them, have left the profession within 10 years of qualifying. That's a problem for our schools, and it's a problem for the education of our kids. So the government has to do something to respond to those issues. Well, it's partly about money. It's partly about things like workload. But you know,
what is being addressed by the Education Secretary?
Well, I don't think the reality is you can't resolve issues around workload, recruitment and retention and not talk about pay at the same time. And that's where I think the government are playing a little bit fast and loose with the British public to say somehow these things aren't connected. They're absolutely connected. And really, the government needs to sit down, as I say, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, come to the table, find some new money.
Yeah, well, they say there isn't any more money. The nurses want more money, the ambulance workers want more money, the train drivers want more money, the civil servants want more money, Border Control wants more money. In what order should people be getting money? Well,
it's important to sort of differentiate. So, for example, the train drivers are working for private companies. Those companies have handed out hundreds of millions of pounds in dividends to their shareholders. I think they could afford a pay rise for their train drivers. Well, actually, it's not about this group of workers is more deserving than the other. What we need is to see pay rising across the public and indeed the private sector. Now, what could the government do about this? The TUC will put in its budget submission today. We'll be at the Treasury today to put in our budget submission, and we'll be saying that the government could, for example, choose to tax the the oil and gas giants more heavily. They could choose to equalise capital gains tax with income tax wealth in the same way they tax workers. That alone would generate another 15 or 16 billion pounds. So government is all about choices. Unfortunately, this government has made the wrong choices.
Well, they are going to wear you down, basically, and it's going to get to April, and then they're going to say, that was last year, there's your money. We're talking about next year now.
Well, I hope that's not the attitude, to be honest with you, Kate.
Well, it
is. They're wearing down not just unions, they're wearing down the British public. I mean, I think, and I've been on the picket lines with our physiotherapists, with our paramedics, when the public are going past, beeping the horns, talking to those workers, showing their support, I think they're very clear whose side the British public are on, and I hope the government listens to that. You know,
it's not necessarily the case. I mean, we've both been doing this long enough to know what's going on, and there will be some support for our NHS, but the other unions, the government is going to wait until the public turns against them.
Well, I think they'll be waiting a long time, to be honest with you, Kay. I mean, it's clear. We did a poll just last week that a majority of parents support teachers taking strike action. But at the end of the day, these are our friends, our neighbours, members of our local community. Everybody knows a teacher, somebody who works in the NHS, somebody who works on the railways. And I think the government trying to divide the British public away from striking workers, I think won't succeed, because those striking workers are part of the local community. They've got those, you know, they're the face of those public services, and I want the government to treat them with respect and deliver a decent pay rise.
How many people have to take part in the march today for it to be deemed a success?
Well, it's not a big national rally, because obviously we do have the train strikes, so we're not bringing people in from all over the country. The key thing is we've got 80 events up and down the country, plenty of opportunities for people to show the support. And later on, I'll be handing in a petition with 250,000 signatures to Downing Street about protecting the right to strike. And I think the government should listen to people power, listen to public opinion, deliver on pay.
Yeah, but if you've got a dozen people with a bullhorn and a dog turning up to Parliament, the government are going to use that as an illustration as to why you don't have any support.
Yeah, well, I don't think it will be a dozen people. What I think they should be looking at the fact is that 500,000 workers today will be taking strike action. That's on top of the hundreds of thousands who've already taken strike action, hundreds of thousands, potentially more to come over the next few weeks and months. They should look at that 250,000 signatures. They should look at those events up and down the country, and they should realise they've misjudged the public mood. And I hope that they do, and I hope that they come to the table.
Do you think there'll be another National Day of Action?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't rule anything out, Kay. My responsibility is to, when workers take that really difficult decision to take strike action, that we support them as much as possible, that we amplify their voices. And I think, the ball is very firmly in the government's court. Let's get round the table, let's resolve these disputes, and let's put money in the pockets of our hard-working public service workers.
Good to see you as always. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much for taking the time. I know you've got a busy day. Thank you.
Yeah.